This is the fourth full-length album from Marina, who has made quite a name for herself in the pop sphere with her first 3 albums, all of which contain colorful and creative yet poignant and commentative material that made her quite a standout act. A couple years ago she released Love Plus Fear, which was easily her weakest album in my opinion. She fit herself with the sounds of Eurobeat and common denominator electropop that led to some pretty woeful results. I did appreciate her willingness to try a new sound and style, but the execution left quite a lot to be desired. But I was curious to see where she would go from there, whether she would continue the stylistic endeavors of Love Plus Fear, or she would tread towards what made her Marina in the first place. And with Ancient Dreams over here, this is a really strong bounce back effort. The opening title track is a pretty locomotive drum / bass line with some cinematic electronic overlays. Marina's steady, concentrated vocal delivery gives an ample weight to the topic of reflecting upon humanity's history, as well on reflecting on yourself. The following Venus Flytrap is essentially a shameless brag about Marina succeeding in life her own way, not having to conform to any standards that she may have come across in the industry. She displays her examples of becoming a millionaire, staying true to herself, opting to be a go-getting Venus Flytrap than a century wallflower. The beat is nice, the hook is solid. Good track. Then we are met with 2 of the lead singles on the album, Man's World and Purge the Poison. Man's World is a glimmering piece of pop that focuses on how tired Marina is of living in a man's world. Pretty self-explanatory in that regard, citing the hypocrisy, cruelty, and downright apathy to the world's issues. Purge the Poison has a pretty big inspirational influence from Billy Joel's We Didn't Start the Fire. I'm not saying it's one-to-one, but you can definitely hear it. Everything from the instrumental to the vocal performance to how Marina cites some events like Britney shaving her head, Weinstein going to jail, the Me Too movement, which coalesces essentially into a recap of more contemporary events while underlining a lot of society's misgivings. Highly Emotional People is a touching piano / string-led ballad going over how people are fragile creatures. Also goes over how men in particular are trained to hide and lie about their feelings essentially until they die. The song shares a powerful statement that showing vulnerability should not be stigmatized, as everyone in their lives will eventually come to periods of time where they'll lose their composure and just succumb to the emotion of the moment. New America is kind of like a Day of Judgment track. Marina sings about how America one day will be held accountable for its history. Boy, am I waiting for that day. Probably will never happen though. The overblown qualities of the track, like the vocal effects and the bombastic instrumental, sell that eventual penance feeling very well. I Love You But I Love Me More is a banger of a breakup track. I love the wistful production and vocals. The songwriting elements are very strong, and the lyrics pertaining to not being gaslit or manipulated in a relationship are pretty well accentuated by the cold chorus. And the closer Goodbye wraps a pretty nice bow on the album. It is an emotional piano ballad of Marina saying goodbye to the girl that she once was, from the songwriting standpoint that the past version of herself is a material entity that she is talking to and that she will genuinely miss. I think it's interesting how the album opens up with the motif of examining society and self-reflection, but throughout most of the album she is being quite critical of society and people in general. So this closer, being the one sole track on the album dedicated to Marina reflecting upon herself, has a lot of weight and emotional impact to it. It is quite a personal send-off. There are a ton of highlights to be had on this record, but there were a couple of lowlights. The songs Pandora's Box and Flowers, both of which are piano-driven tracks, have sentiments and topics that I quite enjoy. I think Marina's vocal performance is fantastic on these tracks, especially on Flowers, where Marina is singing her heart out about how love is in the little things like buying her flowers. But the minimalist nature of the tracks kind of give off this feeling of like missed opportunity, or just opportunities not being capitalized upon. I primarily feel this way about Pandora's Box, which, given its title, has a lot of potential. Like, there is a lot of material there, and Marina is no slouch when it comes to songwriting, but I came away from this track pretty underwhelmed. I felt like the lyrics didn't dive deep enough, and the instrumental kind of staying stagnant really didn't help it out all that much. A more developed progression for it would have done wonders, in my opinion. These are in no means like bad tracks, but I just didn't feel as strongly about them like I did the rest of the track listing. But overall, like I said, this is a great bounce back album which benefits a lot from Marina redisplaying her idiosyncrasies, her personality, and her songwriting acumen, and I am so glad to hear that she's back. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down below, and I will see you in the next video. I'd give it a